A man's home is his castle, and a man has the right to defend his castle with deadly force, otherwise known as the castle doctrine. This is my castle, and I would use deadly force to defend her and her contents. The castle doctrine has been recognized for centuries in virtually every culture and here in America as well. If you invade a man's castle, you put your life at risk, and you shouldn't expect much sympathy when things go south for you in the process. In 2005, the same state that gave us the modern right to carry laws in the 1980s, Florida, became the first state to expand on the castle doctrine and extend your right to protect and defend yourself with deadly force if necessary outside your home to wherever you have a right to be. The law became referred to as the Stand Your Ground Law and proved wildly popular with citizens across the nation who are fed up with crime. Of course, the gun haters and freedom haters went nuts and began to refer to Stand Your Ground as the Shoot First Law. In fact, the Brady campaign went so crazy, they put up this billboard on Florida's Interstate 75 in a wacky attempt to frighten tourists and damage the Florida economy. Like most things attempted by this fanatical group of gun haters, it failed. And now, in 2010, Florida's Stand Your Ground law is being challenged in several high-profile, tragic, but very interesting incidents. James, let's talk about them today on the American Trigger Sports Network, shall we?
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great, James. How are you today?
Yeah, that's great. Listen, before we start, I want to tell you that's pretty nice-looking castle you have there.
I wouldn't call it a castle, but it'll do the trick.
Yeah, very nice. Anyway, I brought my self-defense laws in all 50 states. I love this book, copyright 2010. The attorney Mitch Villos and Evan Villos wrote this book. So as we go through the stories that you're about to tell us, I do have the laws here, and I'll read them out. But you start.
Okay, great. Yeah, Mitch, by the way, has been on my radio program before, and he's a great guest. I applaud the work he's done in that book. You know, in Florida here, over the course of the last 3 months, and predominantly just the last 2 weeks, we have a really interesting confluence of about 4 different cases here that are appearing. 2 of them in particular that I referred to in the video, I'll tell you about real fast out of the gate. The first one, fascinating, tragic, yet fascinating, because these 2 cases appear are going to test the details, if you will, of Florida's landmark Stand Your Ground rules laws here. The first one occurred in Polk County, and a homeowner shot two teens of a group of 4 that were invading his home, and he was not arrested or charged. The castle doctrine applies. These kids were breaking into his home at night, and one of the teens was shot in the head. The other teen was wounded. The 3 were arrested. The 4th teen stayed in the hospital. He later died of the gunshot wound inflicted during the home invasion. The remaining surviving 3 teenagers are now being charged or facing felony murder charges, which make them culpable for the actions of the homeowner that killed their friend and accomplice. And these kids are now facing, under felony murder charges in Florida, mandatory life in prison. The judge has no discretion if they are found guilty, and if in fact they're charged and it works its way through the courts and they are in fact found guilty of felony murder, they're now standing, looking at mandatory life in prison, James.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't have any problem with that. It sounds as though that's correct. I mean, I can refer to the book here, and according to the laws that are written there, the Florida statute 776.01, as a homeowner, you have every right to protect yourself.
It's absolutely correct. And what people need to understand is that if you, as I said in the video at the beginning, if you make the decision to enter someone's castle, the law is going to come down hard on you, and I wouldn't expect too much sympathy. It's interesting, Sheriff Grady Judd out there in Polk made the following comments: when you're right, the law is on your side. When you're wrong, the law is against you. One of the kids' grandmothers said, and I quote, "It's a nightmare. One day everything's fine, and the next it's upside down." Another grandmother of one of the kids said, "Boys will be boys." Get this, boys will be boys. It's his first time ever being in trouble, and they, meaning prosecutors, shouldn't do nothing.
Yeah,
mind-boggling, isn't it?
Who said that? Wait, that was their mother that said that, correct?
That was the grandmother of one of the survivors of the home invasion, one of the defendants.
Right.
Now, what's going to happen? This traces back to English common law, and felony murder is prosecuted in 46 of 50 states. These kids, law's going to come down very hard on them, as it should. Boys will be boys. That's the case. I was a boy, but I don't recall ever invading someone's home in the middle of the night. Now, there's an interesting twist here, James. It turns out that the deputies, after the home invasion, found drugs in the homeowner's home.
Oh, okay, wait, let me stop you right there. Number one, okay, they're there because a gun was used, there was a felony, there was a burglary, there was a shooting. Now, law enforcement is now found drugs. Now, something wrong with that. First off, what are they doing looking for them?
That's a good question, and one that we're going to explore. We're going to follow this carefully. I don't know what they were doing or what caused them to search the home that was being invaded. I don't know. That's a great question. We're going to keep our eyes on this as it works its way through the courts. However, the twist to this is that the Castle Doctrine will not apply to this gentleman who stopped the home invasion against his property if, in fact, it is determined that he was dealing drugs illegally. So, this poses the question, did the kids know there were drugs in the home? Is that why they were breaking in? What happened? Who knows? But this is a fascinating case, and we're going to watch this as it winds its way through the courts. On the surface, obviously, this guy did nothing wrong. He did what you or I or anybody else of like mind would have done. The second case that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, well, let me stop you right there, because before we go to that second case, and I know it's just as interesting as the first, but I think it's important here to point out that if, in fact, it were a drug dealer that was involved here, and law enforcement did come across drugs, this now, and let me just repeat what you said, this will throw out the Castle Doctrine altogether, correct?
It could, yes. If the statute here says, or according to the deputy anyway, that if it's found the homeowner was dealing drugs there, he in fact could be charged. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. I don't have any more details than that. I'm looking at what's being reported by Fox 13 News down in Tampa. So fascinating case and a fascinating turn of events.
And I hope you stay with that one, because I think we should do some follow-up on this. It may be some time before we are able to do that, but I think we should do some follow-up, because I think it's a very important case.
It truly is an important case, especially where the Castle Doctrine law is applied, because most people are in agreement, unless you're, of course, with the Brady campaign, but most people are in agreement with the right to be able to defend yourself against home invaders. So fascinating turn there. We will definitely watch that and stay on top of that one for sure.
All right, tell us about the second case.
Okay, the second one involved a man by the name of Eric Canonico. Eric Canonico is from Tampa, and he held apparently 3 Plant High School boys arrived at his property outside his girlfriend's property, threatening to beat up his girlfriend's son. This gentleman pulled a gun, held the 3 teens at gunpoint as the police were being called. Doesn't seem that there's any problem with that there on the surface, depending on how violent these kids may or may not have been. However, one of the 3 kids apparently got very belligerent and started to approach this man with the typical bravado of a young kid. What are you going to do, old man? You going to shoot me? You going to shoot me? Daring almost this man to shoot him. Well, it turns out Eric Canonico, who was holding these 3 teens at gunpoint until the police arrived, fired a shot into the ground. He is now charged with false imprisonment and illegal discharge of a firearm. And a judge refused to dismiss the charges after a hearing a couple weeks ago in this case. You've got a defense attorney down there that says the charges are in fact justified. He had a deadly weapon, a firearm, and nobody is confronting him with similar force. Now this one, I have a little bit of a problem here, because now we're looking at disparity of force, James. where you've got three young, strapping kids who, by the way, one of them is the grandson of football coach Lou Holtz. An interesting term there. Whose father is in fact the head coach of the University of South Florida football team is involved in this. So another interesting little tidbit there. But here you've got a gentleman that's holding three teens who are threatening to do harm to his girlfriend's son, and he's holding them at gunpoint as police are being called when one of the kids gets belligerent and begins to approach him, and he fires a shot into the ground to stop him. He's now charged with those two crimes: false imprisonment and illegal discharge of a firearm. So again, undoubtedly his defense will be that the Castle Doctrine enabled him to defend his loved ones and himself against what I would consider to be disparity of force. In fact, Kathy Jackson, my co-author, wrote about it in our book. So interesting, very fascinating. And there are, of course, two more cases down there that are winding. They're just very recent ones. One of them occurred just a couple days ago where kids were out skateboarding in a park in Tampa, and it turns out in a suburb of Tampa, and this guy went outside yelling at the kids to stop, and there was a father playing basketball with his 8-year-old daughter, approached the man and told him to stop yelling at the kids. The guy pulled out a gun and shot the father in front of the 8-year-old daughter and killed him. And he is now charged, and I'm reading today that he has now been charged. He was initially let go as they were doing the investigation. He's now charged with manslaughter and a $50,000 bond. But I'm going to bet you money that he's going to use the self-defense. He doesn't have much of a case. He went out there, confronted those kids, and he did it, and he was armed.
Right.
Not a good one there. And we also had an 83-year-old man who used a .22 pistol to defend himself against a robber while he was eating breakfast. When he was followed out to the parking lot, he did not fire it. He did pull it when he got knocked to the ground by the robber who wanted his money, and he has not been charged and will not be charged. All four of these cases seem to apply. You've got the Castle Doctrine, which allows you in Florida and many others now to use deadly force, not have to retreat, and to use deadly force if necessary wherever you have a right to be. It extends the Castle Doctrine beyond the home. So these are fascinating cases. We want to watch these as they wind through the courts for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And I'm trying to go through the book and find out about a warning shot, and you put two more cases up there, and now I'm over my head trying to figure out where to start with information. So I guess we're going to have to put this off to a second day so that I can get caught up here, because right now I can't find anything out about a warning shot, and I'll bet the attorney has something in here about it. I just can't get to it quick enough. But these are absolutely fascinating cases, as you pointed out. And we do need to follow these, and we do appreciate you bringing them to our attention, Mark, and we'll follow up on these again in the future, okay?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't mean to overwhelm you with the other two, but those two cases just popped up over the course of the last couple days. They warrant some more looking at. But the original two that we talked about, Mr. Canonico, who held the three teens at gunpoint, very interesting, and of course the home invasion and now the felony murder charges. Those are the two key ones that we want to follow without a doubt, and we will certainly do so. We talked about them this past weekend on Armed American Radio, and we will continue to do so, both here on American Trigger Sports and on Armed American Radio, as these cases wind their way through the judicial system. Okay, and I'm going to do some more homework. I'll be more prepared when we meet again. Well, I will be too, and hopefully we'll have more information. There's been a lot of news on these coming out, so hopefully we'll have more information as they wind their way through the courts. Okay, and if there's any viewers out there who are close to this subject somehow, please contact either Mark or myself and let us know what's going on. You may have some information that we don't have, and we'd be glad to discuss it with you. Mark, we'll see you again next week, okay? You got it. Thanks, James. Appreciate it.